We continue to follow breaking news. Former President Donald Trump has been indicted in the investigation into his handling of classified documents. The former president and Republican frontrunner in the 2024 election posting on Truth Social that his lawyers were informed that he has been indicted and that he's been summoned to appear at the federal courthouse in Miami on Tuesday afternoon next week. Special counsel Jack Smith is looking into whether Trump improperly handled classified documents after leaving office, and a federal grand jury is meeting about the investigation.
So all of this is separate from the panel that was convening in Washington, D.C., backing up to April. That's when Trump was indicted at the state level over an alleged hush money scheme that happened during the 2016 election. So on his Truth Social profile today, former President Trump writing, quote, "I never thought it possible that such a thing could ever happen to a former president of the United States." He then added, quote, "I am an innocent man. This is indeed a dark day for the United States of America." Thanks for joining us tonight. For Fox 40 News at 6, I'm Eric Harriman.
And I'm Nikki Lorenzo. I want to get some analysis on this. So to discuss this further, we want to welcome our guest in right now at the top of the 6 o'clock hour, constitutional law expert and professor at Loyola Marymount University, Jessica Levinson. Appreciate you giving us some time this evening. So this is just one of several investigations the former president is facing right now. When you heard the news, and I know you track this and the implications, give us your take, your analysis on this indictment.
So at this point, even though it's historic, it was predictable in the sense that we've really been leading up to this for quite a while, and particularly in the last about 24 hours. The question really just was when, not if. The former president's attorneys met with the Department of Justice. He was alerted that he was the target of the investigation. We hit a moment where it would have been more surprising than not if he didn't face charges. And of course, it will be interesting to see the details. But at this point, the reporting indicates that the charges really will track the public information that we have in terms of the timeline of when the former president was asked for these documents, what happened leading up to the FBI executing a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. And so, of course, there's a lot we don't know. But again, the charges really track what we know.
So what could be the former president's best defense here? Because we know he has said in past interviews numerous times, I can declassify anything I want. If I think about it, I can declassify it. So what could be his defense here, in your opinion?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that there's a strong possibility that none of these charges depend on the fact that the documents were classified, in the sense that if you look at obstruction of justice and potentially a provision of the Espionage Act, which I think might be at issue here, and conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice, they don't depend on the documents being classified. And so particularly for obstruction of justice, let's say that those documents were declassified, but the National Archives asked for them back. They said, we're entitled to them. Then the Department of Justice asked for them back, subpoenaed the former president. Now the documents are subject to a federal investigation. He still doesn't give them over, or just gives part of them over. The FBI obtains and executes a search warrant. All of that is not dependent on the idea that the documents are still classified. There's a provision, as I said, of the Espionage Act that might be at issue. That deals with national security information, but it doesn't explicitly say that the documents have to be classified. And so I don't think, in long answer to your question, I don't think that that really is a good defense here.
Well, and also, too, I think it's important to point out that this is one of several investigations involving the former president, too. And just for our viewers who might have a difficult time sort of keeping up here, just kind of talk about the difference between this and what happened with Alvin Bragg out of the Southern District of New York and the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, and how these two are different.
These are completely different cases. Thank you for the question. That is a state case coming out of New York. It deals with the falsification of business records and potentially the former president kind of indirectly paying Stormy Daniels, the adult film star, hush money so that she did not say that she had an affair with the former president right before the 2016 election. And there were potentially campaign finance violations and or tax law violations attached to that. This is obviously completely different, deals with a completely different set of documents, and is a potential crime here that goes to the heart of one's ability to be a representative, in the sense that if you take the people's documents, if you take government documents, then you need to give them back. They're not personal documents. They belong to us. And if you try and keep them and hide them, from an investigation, again, that's where we lead to a place of talking about obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice.
This is all happening too. I know you mentioned this, and we talked about how this is historic, and we expected this. We knew this was coming at some point, and the former president, has sort of indicated that as well. But this is all happening on the backdrop of a presidential election, and Donald Trump right now is the front runner.
And this doesn't change that, very likely. Legally speaking, you can be indicted, you can be convicted, and you can still be the president, in the sense that you could serve your time as president while you are serving your federal prison time. I know that sounds truly insane, but in my reading of the Constitution, there's really only one thing that could potentially bar a president from serving, and that's either an insurrection or giving aid or comfort to those who engage in an insurrection. I know there will be a discussion because one of the potential federal statutes here will say a conviction means that you are barred from holding federal office. It really dates back to the Civil War. But I read Supreme Court case law to indicate that the Constitution lays out the exclusive qualifications to be president, and Congress cannot, by statute, try and add to those qualifications.
I know that you look at things, obviously, from the legal perspective, but you read the tea leaves and what this means politically. And so far, what I'm tracking tonight and what I've seen on air, the White House and President Biden had stayed quiet on this, and I imagine that they're going to do so, continue to do so.
I think that's right. I mean, the federal indictment speaks for itself, and I think there's really no win here for President Biden to come out publicly and say anything that hasn't already been said. The best thing for him is probably what he will do when it came to the New York indictment, which is to say, I'm busy serving the American public, and this doesn't have anything to do with me. Now, of course, it's different because he is the leader of the executive branch, and this comes from the Department of Justice. But politically speaking, there's no win for him to talk.
And we do when I talked about these other cases that we have here in terms of these investigations involving the former president, and we also have the one surrounding January 6th, and also the one that was surrounding the election in Georgia. I know you keep an eye on what is the timeline there, because it seems like this is playing out, and we know that justice sometimes can move swiftly, but it also, when you're talking about the federal level, things can move at a slower pace. When do you expect us to see something on those fronts?
So I think when it comes to the Georgia investigation, the district attorney there has indicated that probably we will have indictment news over the summer. I think over the late summer, because she gave us a timeline for when the next grand jury will be meeting. When it comes to January 6th, I'm going to honestly say I do not know what the timeline is. The grand jury is proceeding as it should, in secret, and I don't have a good sense of when, if ever, we could see an indictment in that case.
All right, Jessica Levinson, constitutional law expert. We appreciate you giving us some time on this busy evening. I know we're going to be talking to you this Sunday for Inside California Politics as well. And so appreciate you giving us some analysis on this breaking story.
Thank you for asking me.